As NFL training camps draw closer and the heat of summer collides with the pressure of opportunity, countless rookies are preparing for the biggest auditions of their lives. Some of these young men were first-round selections, carefully polished stars destined for the spotlight from the moment their names were called. Others were late-round sleepers, hidden gems hoping to prove scouts wrong and turn a whisper of potential into a roar of production. And then there is Shilo Sanders, a player who didn't hear his name on draft night, who didn't get the glitz, the cameras, or the instant validation, yet who has somehow captured more attention than many of those who did. His name, his story, and his bloodline demand attention even when the league seems hesitant to grant him the respect his performance deserves. Shilo has arrived at Tampa Bay Buccaneers camp with a fire that cannot be ignored. He has done everything the NFL claims it rewards. He's shown up early to meetings, he's communicated like a seasoned veteran, he's delivered on special teams, and he has earned praise from coaches and teammates alike. He's not just wearing a jersey, he's fighting for his place in this brutal league through sweat, toughness, and will. But behind this visible grind is a far more complex narrative. Despite his progress, whispers suggest that Shilo may still find himself on the outside, looking in when final roster cuts are made. The reasoning? Strangely, it does not always point to missed tackles, poor reads, or lack of athleticism. Instead, the explanations orbit around his name, his image, and the shadow of the man who raised him. Shilo Sanders is not just competing for a roster spot. He's navigating a system that has historically resented boldness, especially when that boldness comes in the form of a young black athlete tied to one of the most disruptive, unapologetic figures in football history. His journey is no longer just about securing a spot on the 53-man roster. It's about whether the league will allow the continuation of a new Sanders chapter, whether it will embrace or reject a last name that has long stood for defiance. And the outcome of that decision may say more about the NFL than it does about Shilo himself. In professional sports, a name can be both a blessing and a burden. For Shilo Sanders, the reality is becoming increasingly clear. It is both. On paper, he is a rookie defensive back grinding every day for a roster spot. But in reality, he is a young man carrying a last name that carries more weight than some franchises are comfortable acknowledging. That name is not just a reminder of greatness, it is a symbol of disruption. Deion Sanders, Shilo's father, did not simply play the game of football, he changed it. He was loud when others were quiet. He was flamboyant when others chose modesty. He celebrated his identity, his success, and his individuality without apology. And while millions admired him for it, there were plenty in NFL executive circles who never forgot, or forgave, the fact that Deion did all of this on his own terms. Now, his son stands at the threshold of the league, not as a legacy player expecting a handout, but as a grinder trying to earn his way from the bottom up. And yet, everything about this situation feels like a quiet echo of something much louder. The questions surrounding Shilo are not just about whether he can break on the ball quickly enough, or whether he can tackle in open space. They are about whether the league truly wants another Sanders in the spotlight. One who might carry the same confidence, the same defiance, the same refusal to shrink to fit in. Beneath the surface lies an uncomfortable truth. If Shilo were the son of a different figure, someone more agreeable, less defiant, someone who played the game of politics as well as the game of football, would his fate already be different? Would his leadership on special teams, his voice in the locker room, and his consistency on the field already be enough to secure his future? The NFL prides itself on the mantra, "The eye in the sky doesn't lie." Coaches repeat that film never lies, that tape tells the truth, that performance is the one standard above all else. And yet, in the case of Shilo Sanders, the league appears willing to ignore the truth unfolding right in front of them. At Colorado, Shilo built a reputation as a tough, smart, instinctive safety. He wasn't flashy for flash's sake, nor did he lean on his father's last name to make plays. He earned his snaps. He made tackles in the open field. He lined up his teammates correctly. He communicated coverages before the snap. These are traits NFL scouts claim to value above everything else: awareness, leadership, and toughness. Still, they ignored him on draft day. Now at Buccaneers camp, he has carried that same attitude and work ethic. He's flying around on special teams. He's hustling through drills. He's earned praise not just from assistant coaches, but from vet. In the National Football League, the word risk is thrown around so casually that it has almost become a shield for decisions executives don't want to explain. Coaches say it when they punt on 4th and inches. General managers cite it when they pass on drafting talented players who carry so-called baggage. But when the conversation turns to Shilo Sanders, the risk being calculated has very little to do with performance and almost everything to do with perception. On the field, there is no legitimate argument against him. He has delivered results in drills, shown versatility in the secondary, and excelled on special teams. In a position room that isn't overflowing with proven talent, his presence should be an asset. Yet somehow, his very existence on the 53-man roster is treated as a gamble. Not because he lacks ability, but because of who he is connected to. That shadow has a name, Deion Sanders. For some, Deion is a beacon, a larger-than-life figure who showed that swagger and dominance could coexist unapologetically. But for others within the halls of NFL power, his legacy remains something to suppress, a spotlight they would prefer not to deal with again. Deion was too outspoken, too unafraid, too unwilling to play by the league's carefully constructed rules of conformity. And executives know this. If Shilo makes the roster, questions about legacy, favoritism, and the influence of the Sanders brand will inevitably follow. The league thrives on narrative, but only when it's a narrative they can script. Shilo's story is unscriptable. That makes it dangerous. What front offices really fear isn't Shilo blowing a coverage or missing a tackle. They fear Deion's voice if his son is mishandled. They fear headlines suggesting bias or retaliation. They fear media attention that shifts the narrative from football to family, from merit to legacy. In other words, they fear noise. And so, the decision becomes clouded. It's no longer about whether Shilo has outplayed his peers. It's about whether the league wants to embrace or suppress the unavoidable spotlight his name attracts. By labeling Shilo as a potential distraction, the NFL avoids confronting the deeper issue. It still struggles to accept players and families who do not conform to its culture of silence and submission. A rookie who comes from the mold of tradition is embraced. A rookie who comes from the mold of revolution is scrutinized. Shilo isn't bringing chaos into the locker room. He isn't stirring controversy with his behavior. What he's bringing is DNA, a lineage tied to defiance, individuality, and unapologetic excellence. And for some decision makers, that alone is enough to raise alarms. But that hesitation reveals something damning. If the NFL is unwilling to accept Shilo Sanders simply because of the man who raised him, then the issue isn't him, it's the league itself. The real risk here isn't Shilo. The real risk is a league that claims progress but punishes identity. On the surface, Shilo's story looks like a typical training camp battle, an undrafted rookie trying to earn a miracle spot on the final roster. But this isn't ordinary. His fight is not just against depth charts or other rookies. It is against perception, history, and the unspoken rules of a system that has always demanded conformity. Shilo has done the work. He has made the plays. He has shown leadership, bought into culture, and embraced the grind. He has been everything a coach could ask of a developmental player. And yet, his future remains uncertain, not because of his deficiencies, but because of what his last name represents in rooms where decisions are made far from the field. When NFL executives talk about distractions, they're not usually talking about players who actually cause real problems. They're talking about players who make them uncomfortable. Players who command too much attention, who refuse to fade into the background, who come from families unwilling to bow their heads. That is the hidden burden Shilo carries. His presence forces the NFL to look at itself in the mirror, and that reflection has always been uncomfortable. What happens next will speak volumes. If Shilo Sanders is cut despite outperforming expectations, it won't just be a setback for him personally. It will be a message to every young athlete watching. It will say, loud and clear, that even if you do everything right, even if you grind in silence, show up early, earn respect in the locker room, and leave the field with class, the league may still shut the door. Not because of who you are, but because of who they believe you come from. That is bigger than football. That is about fairness. That is about identity. That is about whether the NFL is prepared to stop punishing sons for the audacity of their fathers. Because if Shilo Sanders is sent home, the question will not be, did he earn it? The question will be, why was it never going to matter in the first place? And when that answer